there's really up to 4 people that are going to be essential for your tax team. And this is the easiest thing to understand, sometimes the hardest thing to implement. The first thing is whoever's going to help you with data. This might be a part-time bookkeeper if you're a smaller business. It might be a full-time bookkeeper. It might be a controller that's handling payroll. Or it might be a CFO that's creating pro formas. But what I find is people don't have timely data, they overpay on their taxes. And we did a survey where we talked to 117 clients, and 107 overpaid their taxes that we just randomly called clients that we were working with that year. So 107 out of 117 had overpaid. The average overpayment was like $11,430 per $250,000 of revenue, so it was substantial. The second place on the team is a tax strategist. And a tax strategist is very different than a tax historian. Tax historians are the ones that say, you had a good year, here's what you owe. It's smug and it's going to piss you off. A tax strategist needs to meet with you at least quarterly through the year to say, how can we navigate this tax code? Because the first 300 pages of the tax code say why you have to pay taxes as a W-2 employee. The next several thousand pages say, here's the tax-free roadmap that you don't have to pay if you're providing value as a business owner. So unfortunately, if we look at the accounting world, they're trained in a reactionary state. They're looking to acquire new clients and file taxes, for them, and often that's what they're doing is filing taxes and not strategizing. So you might have a CPA that's a historian, and someone else might have a CPA that's a strategist. Here's the verbiage of a historian. Here's their favorite statements. Tell me if you've heard this one. I'm conservative. Let me interpret that. I'm antiquated, I'm lazy, you are going to pay too much in tax, but I want you to be scared of the government and the IRS, so you'll stay with me. Jeff, is that fair? You were in D.C. for 5 years as what were you, a tax whatever? Tax lobbyist. We have a damn tax lobbyist here. So he was lobbying for you to pay less tax, so I like that. All right, so that's some of the verbiage you might hear. Or, they'll say stuff like, well, you can't write off a home office. Yes, you can. It's right there. I could show you. It's black and white in the law. Or I'll say, hey, you should use the Augusta rule. What's the tax code on the Augusta rule so that they can write that down for the people who don't believe it? 280 HG, AG, 280 AG. And what that says is you could rent your home out to your business for 14 days a year, write it off for the business, and not claim that as personal income. That would also work if you rent it out to someone else, and that money would come in tax-free. Yet I find most accountants don't know that. So the tax strategist is going to be mostly responsible for bucket number 2, called deductions. Okay? The third person on the team, and this depends on your size as to what type of person it's going to be, but it's going to be an attorney. I know Jeff said he didn't like talking to attorneys. I was telling Brian, who's going to speak tomorrow, and an amazing guy. Actually, I actually read the book on your table. I thought it was an amazing book. I actually endorsed it. Don't know if my endorsement made the book, but I endorsed it anyway, and it was the only book I read that year, so I was really proud of myself. Thanks, Brian. I write books. I don't read. I'm not paid to read. Nobody's paid me for that, so yeah. So the third one is an attorney, and that's either going to be a corporate attorney if your business isn't doing $1 million of revenue, or a tax attorney if you're doing more than that. Like, what would you say? $650,000 of net income would probably be the threshold of where you start considering a tax attorney. Now, for me, Jeff is the one that's he saves me 6 figures a year in tax. I know he didn't give a tax talk. They said, Jeff's not entertaining enough to do a tax talk, so you talk on tax even though he knows more than you about it. So he looks like Norm Macdonald, just not as funny. So I don't know why we're friends, because all I do is give him shit all the time. But a tax attorney, for me, is about 2/3 of my tax strategy. The tax attorney is going to be responsible for the reclassification bucket, where the most major things are. Look, you can write everything off in your life and then not be able to get a loan. You can write off so much in your business that if you ever try to sell it, it looks like it was a place where you just stole money from every single day, and a lot of business owners do that. They treat it like a lifestyle rather than a business. But I make sure in my business, I'm not able to do anything an employee wouldn't be able to do. So I don't have a business credit card that I just charge. I don't pay for a car out of the business. I have a different entity that I do those types of things out of without partners, and that is never going to be sold because it's just my intellectual property company. So ultimately, the tax attorney is going to be really helpful. And then the fourth one, most of you probably already know if you own commercial property, is a cost segregation engineer. So you can look at doing that cost segregation study, accelerate your depreciation. If you own any commercial property, I would definitely look into that. I'm sure there's like 100 people here in the room that could tell you about what that is. All right, so that's the team. I like to have that team on the phone, and when I'm on the phone with them, we actually have a call coming up next week that Jeff's on, and what I do is I think like an entrepreneur. I'm not talking to the IRS, and we're not actually going to implement everything that I talk about, but on that call I'll say, headed to Italy, I'd like to write off the trip. They giggle, they laugh, I go, no. Like, let's think about it. Here's the number of clients that are coming over the 2 months while we're in Italy, so even though, they're friends and clients, I'm going to do an immersion. Sometimes I do like 10 immersions a year where I'll meet with someone one-on-one. I did an immersion while I was there. I said, let's go to where my family was from and film, and then that could be part of this documentary thing that we're doing. And by the end of the call, 55% of the trip's a write-off. So when they say no, I'll say, in what instances or what businesses could this be a write-off? And what's the coolest thing that you've done for a client since we talked last? Is there any new updates or rule changes? And what you do is you just brainstorm, and then a lot of it gets thrown out. Like we were brainstorming with Jeff once, and he's like, well, you're going to do this renovation to the office. Your father-in-law is a contractor. You could pay him at his tax rate, and you'll write the full thing off, but then his income will be less, and then he can gift that money to you. And I was like, that's a good idea. It's just not what we're actually doing, so I don't want to be unethical. So thanks for the unethical advice, Jeff. No, but this is the thing. We're just brainstorming on the call, and then we're deciding what's real after the call. And I remember the tax attorney on that call said, well, Garrett, sometimes you just make a lot of money, and you should get used to paying taxes. And guess who hasn't ever been on the call again? Yeah. So, all right, so that's the team. Let's move to this next bucket of tax deductions. So if you're a business owner, anytime you spend money, number one, I want you to document all your spending and just ask this question. Could this relate to my business? Not does this, or is this definitive? Could this relate? I bought a Can-Am. Anyone know what a Can-Am is? Like super fast, go-kart looking, Batmobile looking things, that none of my family will ride with me because they're a bunch of pussies. So, sorry, I don't know if we have like a no swearing clause in this thing. Okay, cool. Because I just signed a speaker agreement for later this month where they said no swearing, and I was like, okay, got it. So I get on the phone with them, I'm like, can we write this off? They laugh again. I said, no, look, I host my immersions at the cabin. We can take people for a ride in it, and at the beginning of my podcast, we have video of it, so it turns out we could write off like 50% of it by the end of the phone call. Again, you want to have these conversations and then say, can I write this off, or in what instance could I? I remember I was doing a lot of videos, and I said, hey, can I write this off because I bought these clothes and all this? They said, no, that's not an official uniform. You can wear it out every day. I said, yeah, but I'm pretty sure all these Hollywood movies, they're buying stuff and writing it off, and it's just regular clothes for the most part. They said, yeah, but they're a production company. And I said, great. My intellectual property company will change the operating agreement. It's now a production company because it's producing videos all the time, and now I could write it off. So classification will matter in those instances. So number one in deductions, we're saying, okay, where are we spending money? And then number two, could this relate to my business? And then you talk to them on a quarterly basis. So I wrote down some other deductions that I think everyone should consider. How many people in the room have W-2 employees by a show of hands? W-2 employees. If you have W-2 employees, the employee retention credit has been sweetened. It was $7,000 for the year 2020, and there were some qualifications, like you had to be impacted by COVID. But now it's basically, did you sneeze once in 2021? Great, you're now qualified for it. And it's now up to $21,000, I believe, for 2021 per employee, plus the 2020. So we just had a dentist get back $500,000 for employee retention credits. So did you keep employees during COVID? Are they W-2? That would be something to look into as far as deductions go.
Hey, hopefully that was the most enjoyable video you've ever watched around the topic of tax. Now, if it was, and you want to learn even more around tax, I've got more videos that are similar, but will give you more details or different concepts and ideas so you can put that money back in your pocket.